Hey Dan, Lana here and I are big fans,
I apologize that I am just now finding out about this video, but thank you very much for the kind words.
and we were wondering if you could talk about universalism in the early church, like the history, and maybe universalism throughout the church history. Thanks.
Hey, thank you for a wonderful question. This is a topic that is hotly debated, and there's not a ton of clarity on it in early Christianity, but there have been a couple of popular books recently that have brought some attention to it, such as Rob Bell's book Love Wins or David Bentley Hart's book That All Shall Be Saved. But I think it goes back to the way we negotiate with the New Testament's representation of post-mortem divine reward and punishment. There's not a consistent, systematic notion of how that's going to work. We have different representations within the New Testament. And the three Greek words that are commonly translated hell in English translations of the Bible are not used by all of the authors in the New Testament. For instance, none of the genuine Pauline epistles have a single word to say about hell. We do find the words that are translated hell in the Gospels and in other writings, but they're also represented inconsistently. Sometimes we get the sense that this is eternal conscious torment, what would later become the classical configuration of this idea of hell. Sometimes we get the sense that post-mortem divine punishment is annihilation, that the individual just ceases to exist altogether. And sometimes within the New Testament, as well as within early Christian literature, we get the sense that the idea is temporary conscious torment followed by either annihilation or salvation, that the punishment will be commensurate with the severity of the crimes, and then the person will be purified and will be saved. And a lot of folks would argue that universalism really pops up first within second century Gnostic literature, which talks about the spirit overcoming the corrupt flesh and ascending to rejoin the pleroma, the fullness of the divine. But there do seem to be ways that other Christians are talking about something similar. For instance, Paul in 1 Corinthians 5 is talking about a man who seems to be having a sexual relationship with his father's wife, which is explicitly prohibited according to the Hebrew Bible, and it even merits the death penalty according to Leviticus 20. But Paul tells the Corinthians to cut him off, basically excommunicate him, turn him over to the buffetings of Satan. And he says, so that the flesh will be destroyed, and so that the spirit will be saved in the day of the Lord. And there's an argument to make that Paul is suggesting Satan will punish the flesh, and that will allow the spirit of the man to be saved. Others suggest that this spirit doesn't have a possessive suffix identifying it as the man's spirit, and so maybe it's the general spirit of the Christian community there in Corinth, or something like that. So it has to be negotiated. Because there is no univocal, one single consistent notion of salvation in the New Testament, you've got to pick and choose which passages are going to take priority and which passages are going to be subordinated to the interpretive agenda that prioritizes those other passages. And within early Christianity, we see different takes on this. There's a term, Apocatastasis, which refers to the restoration of all things. We see this term in Acts, although there it doesn't seem to have anything to do with universalism. But it gets taken up by folks like Origen of Alexandria, Gregory of Nyssa, even Eusebius of Caesarea, it seems, as a kind of universal salvation. The restoration of all things will mean that all people will be restored to their intended or their original state. This is interpreted by an awful lot of folks as universalism, and there are a couple of books you can look up for discussions about apocatastasis and universalism within early Christianity. But by the 4th to 8th centuries CE, this position is being heavily criticized and is being condemned at councils, and so it becomes less and less common over the centuries and becomes anathema and heretical for the majority of Christianity throughout the majority of its history. But in recent years, again, there's been a resurgence of interest in this as people have interrogated the New Testament more critically to better understand what was actually going on within those earliest periods of the Christian community and the Christian church. So it's something that's going to continue to be debated, but there's certainly an argument to make that some concept of universalism is detectable within the New Testament and certainly within early Christianity as well. Hope that was helpful, and the fit for this video has been Frank Miller, Superman, Batman, and Robin.